That's ISO.
Rack it up, I got a bit of the bank to make me a safe house. Shake it up, she got her hands on her knees.
All right, folks, welcome to The Wealth Ladder, the podcast where we meet with successful business owners and entrepreneurs, and they help you recreate the steps that they took on the path to generating wealth and success. Today, we have an esteemed guest. I'll let him introduce himself. Let's go.
Yeah, so my name's Rick Mele, and so I'm with Toro. So we do business loans, stuff like that. I'm sure we'll get into it. And in Utah, and happy to be here.
All right, Rick, tell us about how did you get to where you're at right now? Was it something that you always had in you? Did you luck into it? Talk to us about your path.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting journey. I grew up in northeastern Ohio. I grew up about an hour southeast of Cleveland, and that's the Rust Belt. And so anyone that's from that area, LeBron kind of summed it up. When he came back to Cleveland, they won the championship. He said, in northeastern Ohio, everything is earned, nothing's given. And I, from a young age, everyone there just works a 9 to 5 overtime. Like a good job is like getting in the union and working, doing plumbing or welding or working at General Motors. That's my grandpa. He worked there for 30 years, retired from General Motors. And growing up in that area, it's kind of, I don't want to say like anything bad, but it's a tough area. There's a good saying that a lot of people say there. It's a great place to grow up. It's a hard place to live. And as the area is really good for kids, tons of sports. I'm a big football guy. And so I grew up playing ball. My brother played ball. He would play ball in college. And I grew up there and saw the struggle, man. It was like a lot of paycheck to paycheck, a lot of people just getting by. And I got lucky with my dad because he owned a few businesses. So he owned a construction company. He owned a car dealership, a car wash. And so he owned these different businesses and it was able to show me that, okay, you can do other things other than work a 9 to 5. And growing up, I've been into cars forever, love cars. And I remember having like pictures of Vipers and Ferraris and all that stuff on my wall. And so what's crazy is I never saw one of those cars in person, ever. I thought just movie stars owned them. Like I didn't know that was like a real car that someone could buy. And as I started getting older and starting to kind of going through high school and starting to figure out, okay, what do I want to be? What do I want to do? I knew what I didn't want, and I didn't want to be there. And I wanted to be somewhere where I had more opportunity. And so my brother, he worked for a cabinet company, and they ended up building a big plant out here. So he was in upper management. He moved out. So when I graduated high school, he said, hey, come live with me. We can do whatever, and you can go to school, work, whatever, and you don't have to worry about rent or anything else. Okay, cool. So I moved out. I graduated high school. 5 days later, I moved to Utah. And it's being from Ohio, where I had all my friends and everything else, that transition was pretty hard. It was like especially being a kid, like your whole life is like the people you grew up with. It's your friends, it's your family. And as much as my brother is my family, it's my mom. I have 3 sisters. I have another brother. My parents are there. And so I got up, I left, and I was like, man, I'm ready to come home. And I remember sending an email to my mom because I didn't want my brother to hear. He sacrificed a lot for me to come out. And I sent my mom an email and I said, hey, I was there maybe 3 days. And I'm like, hey, this is really tough. The last day I was there, I had all my friends and we went and had this party. And I was like, man, I don't want to leave, but I know I have to. But 3 days go in, I email my mom. I'm like, Mom, this is really rough. I want to come back. And she's just stick it out, figure it out. But I graduated high school when I was 17. So I was like the youngest kid in the class or whatever. And so I couldn't get a real job yet. So I moved out, got a job at Kmart. I was driving like a forklift in the back. And my brother's like, are you going to go to school? And, I was thinking about going to school. And I ended up applying for a job on monster.com. I don't know if that's still a thing, but
is that a thing?
I found this job, sales job, and all growing up, I used to prank call people all the time. And I was like that funny kid in the group that just prank call and did whatever. And so I go to this interview and I'm 17. I walk in, I'm in this call center. Utah's known for like call centers and stuff like that. And I go in and there's 150 people on this floor of people, and they're all on the phone. It's loud. It looks like something out of Wolf of Wall Street. And I walk by this board And I'll never forget because I'm friends with the guy to this day. His name's Brian. And I walked by the board and it said Brian. And next to his name, it said $34,000. And so I asked the recruiter, I said, what does that mean? And he said, that's how much money he made this week. And I'm like, wait, he made that this week. This guy's 24, 25 years old. And so at that point, I said, okay, whatever I got to do. So I started working there. My first day, I got a sale for $8,000. And the way that it worked is like you split it with whoever the closer was. So it was 4,000 for me, 4,000 for him. So I went home. My brother, he's worked his butt off, worked his way up through this company. And I'm like, I made more than what you make in 2 weeks in one day.
Oh, man, you know what? You just wanted to rub that into your brother's face.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It was like competition at that point. And my brother's, and what's funny is I got my paycheck thinking I was getting $4,000 and I got 20% of that. So I made about $1,000, which to me, you know, coming from Ohio, $1,000 a week, you're like a king. Like,
so
you were the
LeBron of Ohio.
Yeah, literally. I'm like the LeBron of Northeastern Ohio. I'm like, this is unreal. I just kind of stuck with it and I met the right people. And I think the biggest thing is hard work doesn't go unnoticed. And for me, like I brought that Ohio blue collar work ethic to sales that a lot of people struggle in sales because they don't want to work hard. And I was the guy that was like pounding the phone, calling 200 people a day, just doing whatever it took. And so that kind of brings me to how I got to Toro was I worked at that company for a couple of years, and then I started working at another company doing the same thing. They were paying more, so I went there. And I was the top sales rep there for, I think it was 2 years. So 2 years back to back, I was a top sales rep. And they ended up selling that company. And so they sold the company. And my buddy that was a partner in it, he took his buyout and went and started another one. So I actually went with him, worked for him for a couple years. And the guy that sold it, the original guy, called me. His name's Cam. And he called me out of the blue. I was working and I was making good money. I was making six figures. And he called and just said, hey, I'm starting this business loan thing. I don't know if it's going to work. Do you want to come run it? And I said, what are you going to pay me? He goes, I don't know if it's going to make any money. So it was kind of perfect timing for me because I was married, no kids, no bills. I had an apartment, no car payments. It was like, if I'm going to make nothing, this is the time to do it. And that was in 2015. And since then, it started from really two guys in an office to we have 3 offices now. We have over 100 employees, and it just kind of got huge. And it's weird how when you're on that journey, a lot of people, they overestimate what you can do in a year and they underestimate what you can do in 5. And that was kind of me. It was like, I was like, okay, I left my 6-figure job. I'm making 6 figures doing this business. And it's, yeah, that's good. And all of that. What really kind of changed for me, like what took me kind of to the next level was my wife, she's pregnant and she's, hey, we're renting this townhouse. It's time to buy. And I'm like, okay, we're going to buy a house. And so I start doing the math. I'm like, okay, so I'm going to have to save this much. I'm going to have to pay this much in tax because of this much money. And I start kind of doing the numbers. And I watched a video. It's by a guy named Charlie Rocket. If you guys are rap fans, he's the manager for 2 Chainz. And so,
whoa, that's okay. I didn't expect that one.
So he's got a video. If you pull it up on YouTube, it's called 10-Minute Monday with Charlie Rocket. And I watched this video because I feel like I was kind of stuck. We were doing okay. We're just moving along and not a whole lot of growth, just kind of staying the course. And I watched this video and he started talking about writing your goals down. And I remember like when I first started that first sales job, all these guys, young guys, in their early 20s, they're making, $500,000 a year. And they all had vision boards and they all were writing their goals down. And being like the young punk kid that I was, I'm like, these guys are dumb. Like, why you think because if you put a picture of Bora on a wall that you're going to go to Bora? That's not how it works. And that kind of led me to watching this video. And I watched the video and I'm like, all right, every successful person, you listen to Grant Cardone, you listen to anyone that really has made a lot of money, they all write their goals down. And I'm like, there's got to be something to it. So I started really just focusing on that, like writing my goals down, saying them to myself, the affirmation stuff, and just kind of really getting into that more. And that took me from, it doubled my income. And then the next year it doubled it again. And the next year it doubled it again. And it just has kind of grown from that point. And yeah, so that's kind of how I got to where I'm at. I think going kind of to bring it back full circle, as a kid, I loved cars and I always wanted to have a car. And I remember when I first started really making pretty good money, we were first married. I was like, okay, I'm going to buy a Camaro. So I bought a 2015 V6 Camaro that was manual.
What color?
And I loved that thing. It was like, yeah, I got the sports car. And then I was like, okay, after you kind of have that for a little bit, okay, it's time for the V8. I got to get the SS. So I got the SS. And then I was like, really, as much as I love Camaros, I really like Corvettes. So when those new C8s came out, I bought a C8 Corvette. And once I bought the C8, I was like, this is fun, but I want something where the doors go up. So I sold the Corvette and I bought a McLaren 570S. And I had the McLaren and I wanted to go from a 570 up to a 720. And my wife said, you've already had a McLaren, buy a Ferrari. So I bought a Ferrari 488 and I sold that back in May. And then I bought another McLaren. I bought a McLaren 600 LT. And it's just crazy how, again, you look 5 years. I went from driving a $40,000 Camaro to being able to buy a $270,000 Ferrari in the span of 5 years. And it's hard work over time. It's the idea of compound pounding. It's a water hitting a cliff. Eventually, like, you don't see that cliff moving, but you fast forward 100 years, it moved a half an inch. You fast forward 1,000,000 years, it moved 10 feet. And so it's just that constant pounding the phone, pounding whatever you're doing to get there.
Awesome. Man, there's a lot that we have to unpack over there. I know for the car enthusiasts, they were just drooling. We're going to rewind, Rick. What were some of the challenges that you hit and you like, I have to overcome this? And you're a guy, like you said, you're from Ohio.
Yeah.
So you have that mindset where, you know what, keep pounding. What were some of the biggest challenges you faced besides being homesick?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and I think everyone struggles with it, is just being able to believe in yourself. For me, it was like when I first started in sales, it was like, man, if I can make $1,000 a week, I'm rich. You don't even think about, what if I made $10,000 a week? What if I made $20,000 a week? That wasn't even in my mind. I didn't even believe that was something that I could do. And I think that was the hardest thing, was like, I feel like over time, you start to kind of, as the numbers go up, you start to kind of build confidence. You set a new bar of, this is the minimum that I expect from myself. And that's why Grant Cardone's got a good book called The 10X Rule. And he talks about setting your goals 10X higher than what your real goal is. And I don't necessarily believe in that 100%, but it has some truth to it. Because if you set your bar, let's say, I want to make $100,000 a year. And if you set your bar at 250, and you try and hold yourself accountable to that 250, what would it take? How many people would you need to talk to? How many things would you need to do? And at the end of the year, if you make 150, is it better to make 150 when you're shooting for 250, or is it better to make 90 when you're shooting for 100? Set those. That was kind of my whole thing, was just learning how to, one, believe that I could do it, but also be able to set my goals a little bit higher. And being from Ohio, it was pounded in my head from when I was young that it's hard. Life is hard. Like, it's a tough thing, and you're going to, paycheck to paycheck is normal. This is a normal situation. And it took me a long time in getting into the right circles with the right people to realize that's not how you have to live your life. There's ways that you can do it without having to live that paycheck to paycheck lifestyle.
It sounds like you had to remap the way you think. And I love that. Yeah. I want to also touch on this leadership and team building, because you, like you said, matter of fact, I'm going to go back to this. The fact that you asked somebody, how much am I going to get paid? And they said nothing. And you took that job offer. That's something that we don't see a lot of people do nowadays. How much guts did it take you, or leap of faith, or blind faith? Talk to us on that.
Yeah. So the saying that you're an average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so when I was working at that company, the guy that called me, he called me because I was the hardest worker there. He didn't call me because I'm the smartest or I know everything or even that I'm the best. I was just willing to outwork everybody. And with that, I knew that he was successful. He grew up a similar situation to me. He grew up in southern Utah. His parents owned a mechanic shop. He had 5 brothers, and his family, his brothers were getting in and out of trouble all the time. He was the one that kind of stayed in the good. And he's just a grinder. He's just willing to work hard. And that got him to the point where he was able to exit a company, make a ton of money, and literally was bored. I'm sitting at home. I'm retired. I'm 32 years old. I want to keep going. And so for me, I had faith in him just because I knew his background and I knew how he grew the company I was at before. And I wanted to be part of that. And I believed in myself enough to know that whatever it is, I could make it work. And a lot of people, like you said, they're not willing to take that. I'm making $100,000 a year to say, hey, I'm not going to make $100,000 a year anymore. I'm going to make nothing and hope that this pans out. It takes some guts, but it was I want to say it was calculated on my end. I talked with my wife, hey, this is what it is, how it's going to work. And my first week when we first started, where I kind of got some faith was like my first week, I ended up being able to clear, it was about $10,000 deals that we funded. And I'm like, oh, I can do that in 1 week. What can I do in a year? And yeah, so that was kind of it.
Okay. So let's talk to the team building aspect of it, because like you said, it started out with you two. And you said the company has over 100 people now. How were you guys able to build this team? What do you look for when you're building a team? Yeah,
that's a really good question. So the way that we started is just like any kind of sales company, we have a ton of people in and out, right? And you bring someone on, hey, it's not for me. Okay, cool. On to the next. And so when we first started, we were hiring. I brought over one guy that was on my team at the other company. So he was like my number 2. I brought him over. And then the people that we hired after that, for the first year, they were set up on the same thing. Hey, this is 1099. This is commission only. We're going to pay you whatever the commission rates are. And we found people that were willing to grind for the money. And that's what we were able to do. Now it's a little bit different. We live in a different world now than it was 8 years ago, where, the first question people ask when they get an interview is, how many vacation days do I get? So we're like, it's in sales. We do give vacation days, but if that's your first question, you're probably not going to be a good fit. And so we built a good core of guys. We went from 2 to about 10. And with that 10, those 10 are still here. Those guys are still here. And because of the type of person that they understand that, hey, you make your own way. It's going to take work. It's going to take effort, but you get rewarded for that on the back end with the income. But that's how we built it. We got the right people. And then from there, like my whole team of guys, so pretty much what I focus on, I'm sure we'll get into it, is we fund startups, people that are new businesses. They don't have to be new, but that's the primary person that we fund. So with my team of guys, almost all of them are people that I met at the gym, believe it or not. So literally they worked at a supplement store, and I'd go in there, they'd make a protein shake. They saw the cars and they're like, oh, wow, what do you do? Oh, I do business funding. And so it was people that I became friends with that were working sales, but not this type of sale. And I'm like, hey, you're making you get no commission. You're making $12 an hour to make protein shakes and sell protein. With our system, just come work for us. You'll make more than that just in your base pay. And then on top of that, there's a potential to make a lot more money on the commission side. And so I feel bad now, but because that supplement store, I've taken 6 of their employees.
Oh man!
And they work
anybody looking for a good salesman, just go to your local supplement store.
Yeah, seriously. It was and it wasn't that they were even good salespeople. It's just everything that we do is all about just having a conversation, right? It's just, can you hold a conversation? And if you can, then you'd be good at what we do. It's not hard. We're giving people money. It's not. And the money that we give is 0% APR for 18 months. We're not selling some crazy high interest rate program. It's it's cheap money. And if you can carry a conversation, you can sell the product. And that's what we went after. And those guys have worked for me I have 0 turnover, 0 on my side. So my guys have worked for me. It's almost I'm not Jordan Belfort by any stretch. What we do is totally legal. But with that, it's the loyalty that those guys have, because I took them from working a job that was kind of a dead end job. They're making $12 an hour. to where every guy on my team now, they make at least 6 figures a year. And so they would go from making $12 an hour, no college degree, no nothing, but to making really good money and being able to buy the cars. Like one of the guys on my team, it's one thing that gets us really excited here is because we're all car guys, right? So I'm like the exotic car guy. Cam, he loves classics. So he's got Camaros, Challengers. He's got a 59 Cadillac. He has a 59 Ford pickup. He's got a C1 Corvette. He's got all of these classic cars. For us, one of my guys on my team just 2 weeks ago just bought a 2022 Corvette. And when he came here, he was driving like a beat down Toyota Camry. And it's to be able to change their position and their mindset to just be able to do it. What's hard is that anyone can do it. It just takes the right mindset to do it.
Got it. So let's delve into this. You help new businesses and small businesses.
Yep.
If I'm a new business or small business, what are the qualifications in order for me to do business with you, Rick?
Yeah. So we run 2 different products. So one is like what I primarily focus on is a line of credit program. And with that, it's all credit driven. So they don't have to have, there's not a certain amount of income. There's not a certain amount of time in business. They can literally be pre-revenue startup. What we look for is 680 plus credit. So they have to have good credit and that's it. It's a credit driven product. So if their credit's solid, we can get them anywhere from 10,000 to 150,000. Our average client that we run gets about 50K. And then it's at a 0% APR for between 12 and 24 months, depending on the client. And so if you average everything out, average deal is going to be $50,000, 18 months, 0%. And it's got monthly payments. And so that's my primary. And on the second side, it's more for an existing company. It's all based on their revenue or their receivables. And we can usually fund those. Those are quick, same day. We can give them up to 100% of their monthly sales. You own a restaurant, you're doing $100,000 a month in sales. We can give you $100,000. You'll have it in your account tomorrow.
All right. Rick, you've definitely, you got some sauce in regards for people. Talk to me this, because I already see some of the milestones that you hit in regards to the exotic cars. But talk to me about some other milestones and achievements that you've been able to hit on your path to success.
Yeah. So I think kind of one thing that was really important for me is with my dad, he worked a lot. He owned 3 companies. He was busy all the time. And there's a really good book. It's called Winning by Tim Grover. And he talks about balance and how there is no balance. If you're chasing something, you have to give it 100%. If you want to be the best at something, you have to give it your all. And he kind of tells a story about his daughter and about how he was going on a trip. He was the personal trainer for Michael Jordan. And they were going on a trip and he was packing his bag and she said, "Why do you have to travel so much?" And he said, that's how I provide for you and put food on the table. And she said, "Well, if I eat less, would you stay?" And he said, it took me a long time to get to that point where I could tell that story without busting into tears. But he goes, in real life or in a movie, the dad would just say, "You know what? I'm done. I'm not going to travel ever again. I'm not going to do it." But this is real life. I told her, "Hey, we're going to do all these fun things when I get home." And we did every single one of those things. But so going back to the milestone, I think the biggest thing is like when I had so I have 2 kids. I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And the boy is 5 and then our daughter is 2.
Okay. Awesome.
And with my wife, she's the best. She stays home with the kids. She does everything. She's taking them to school. She's doing everything. And she knows that we have goals. We have things we want to do. There's stuff going on. Like her mom she had a stroke. And so we're like, okay, we're building a home and like we have to do these things so that she could live there, but also not be in our house at the same time. So there's costs a lot of money. And so we're like, there's some balance that I have to sacrifice. But I think the biggest thing for me was milestone wise was that one, I had my son. And when we had our son, I said every night I'm going to put him in his bed. So every night, that's what I'm going to do. I may not be there every second, but every night I'm going to put him in his bed and I'm going to, tell him a story. And I'm going to do that every single day. And I've done that every single day. And I think that was a big thing for me is that with my dad not being there all the time. My dad, he actually passed away when I was 15. And so with that, it was like, I want to be there for my son. And the kids remember those kind of things. And there's things that I remember with my dad that we did that he was super consistent on. And so that's one thing I want to be sure of. And, as I want to be consistent on that side. But as far as kind of like business wise, I think that one was like just taking the leap, like to just do it, to just say, hey, like I'm making good money, but I can make a lot more money and I can do it for myself. So having that belief. And then two is with what we do, a lot of it is there's competition. There's a lot of other companies out there. And so we've created kind of like a process that really no one else has, as far as how we're able to update people's credit reports, how we can help them liquidate these accounts that we get them at 0%. We started off not knowing what we're doing to where now we're the best company in the space of what we do. And it was a lot of small milestones along that way of figuring that out. And I don't know if that answers the question, but that was.
Oh, no worries, Rick. Man, look, you're doing great. And for the folks out there, let them know what company you work for, Rick.
Yeah, so our company is Toro. So it's just TORO.com.
All right. And you spoke about that work-life balance. What does the future look like for you, Rick? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, right now we've kind of built up a huge referral network. So we work with a ton of brokers. I always joke with these clients, I'm going to try another company. I'm like, all roads lead to Toro at some point. You're going to talk to me again. And literally before this call today, I talked to a client who he filled out an application on our site about 2 weeks ago, decided not to move forward. He went to a broker who sent him to me, called him like, hey, like we talked to you 2 weeks ago. What's going on? And they're like, man, everywhere I go, I'm talking to you. And I think the biggest thing for me is I've kind of spent the last 3 to 4 years building up this network of referrals. And at the same time of doing that, I'm doing these kind of interviews, I'm doing Zoom trainings, I'm doing all these things to kind of build it up. And we've kind of built it to a point where it's pretty self-sufficient on that side. For me, I kind of want to get off of the phone more. Not so much like calling, actually talking to clients, but more dealing with the relationship side of stuff. And so that's part of me coming to the SDR conference, is being able to kind of go that route a little bit more, talk to more business owners that are already in business that can benefit from this type of capital, especially with the Airbnb stuff. I found a ton of them. I mean, it's probably a third of what we do is either fix and flip or Airbnb. And because once you buy the property, you just outlaid all this cash. Now you got to furnish it. And so we can give you something that's 0% for the next 18 months for you to furnish it, get it actually operating, making money. And you're not having to worry about those huge interest payments, and you're not spending all of your cash to do it. And kind of focus more on that. My wife, she really wants to travel. So we'll be in Austin. My wife's going to come with the kids. And so we kind of want to focus a little bit more on that.
All right, Rick, this is where you're going to close it out, and you're going to also tell the people where they can find you. Give us some closing inspirational words.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing that I've kind of learned like throughout the last 15 years of just being on the grind is just that the harder you work, the luckier you get. And like I said earlier, hard work does not go unnoticed. And if you're willing to put in the time, put in the effort, you can do whatever you want. I should not be where I'm at right now. I shouldn't be here. I should be in Northeastern Ohio working at a grocery store making $12 an hour. That's what I should be doing. But I saw a bigger picture. I saw something. I went for it. And it took a long time. And I think that's one thing people underestimate is the amount of time. It's not, I didn't just move here and all of a sudden I'm like, man, I'm driving Ferraris. It took me 15 years of honing my skill to get to where I'm at. And so just stay on the path. Just keep working and keep grinding. The way to get a hold of me is you can go to Toro.com. That has all of our contact infos on there. Or you can shoot me an email. That's probably the best way to get a hold of me. So my email, it's just my first. So it's rick.mele, M-E-L-E, @Toro.com. And yeah, anything you need, questions, you have a client that wants to get funded, we offer a referral program. And so you're able to get paid on those. Anything you need, feel free to reach out.
All right. That was Rick Mele, driving Ferraris. He started out in Camaros or whatnot from Northeastern Ohio. And one thing that I loved about this interview is the fact that you are willing to be uncomfortable. Like you said, you moved to Utah and you wanted to hightail it back. And shout out to mom for telling you, like, hey, stick in there.
Yeah.
And that enabled you to hit some of the milestones and living the life that you're living today. And if you would have just packed it up and went home, like you said, more than likely you would have probably been at a grocery store.
That's it. Yeah. Shout out to mom.
Shout out to mom. All right, folks. Amazing interview. That was the Wealth Ladder. Rick, thank you for jumping on here. And folks, we'll catch you guys next time. Peace.
She bringing the cake out. Rack it up. I got a bit of the bank to make me a safe house. Shake it up. She got her hands on her knees and she bringing the cake out. Smoke it up.